two really big red flags when talking with a supplier. So supplier, vendor, service provider, MSP, OEM, equipment manufacturer. I don't care, what terminology you use. I'm just going to use the supplier. I have two major red flags when talking with a supplier about their product or service. I'm going to talk about them right now. I'm Max Clark. This is 20 Minutes Max. And my first red flag is priceless. Now, I'm not talking about a solution sales process where you have to call in and talk to a seller, and that seller has to go through, a solution sale or a BANT with you in order to build value before they tell you how much a thing costs, because you can't know how much it costs before they've established value and you validated that you actually need the thing so desperately that you're going to buy it regardless of how much money. I'm not talking about the whole solution sales bullshit. I am talking about whether or not a price list actually exists or not. If you're talking to a company that sells pins and they don't have a prescribed price for this pen in different quantities and options, like is it black, is it blue, is it 0.5 millimeter or 0.7 millimeter, is it in quantity 1 or 500 or 10,000 or 10 tons? If you are interacting with a supplier about a service or product and they do not have a price list already in place for that thing you're talking to them about, that is a major red flag in my book. Now, big caveat. The big caveat is if you're talking about you're trying to do custom something, if you're doing a custom software development, if you're doing like custom integration, if you're doing custom migration, that kind of stuff, okay, fine. You've got to go through a scoping exercise. You've got to scope the project and you've got to come up with a scope of work. And then based on that, you're going to get into, a price. Fine. I'm not talking about like those sorts of things. Now, within that being said, if you're dealing with a marketing agency that all they do is branding and logo development, they're going to probably come to you if they're doing this full time. They're going to say, oh yeah, a logo project is $50,000. A brand identity is $50,000, right? It's $50,000. It's not like it's going to be, and you can kind of see maturity. Again, it's kind of like maturity of their operations is what you're sussing out based on price list or not, no price list. Is this a mature product that exists in product? If you go deal and talk to a large organization, and I'm not talking about like a small service provider that's like an SMB themselves of sub 50 people where they're just going out and making it happen. I'm talking about somebody who's figured out how to grow and scale. In order to bring a product to market at scale, you've got first you have product teams. You have a product manager usually, right? Maybe there's a CPO with PMs underneath them. You have an engineering team. You've got some product or service that's created. Then you've got, a sales and marketing team. You've got a finance team. There's lots of interactions with a company that come together that create this thing that then goes out to market. If there's a price list, it means it's gone through all these different steps. A PM or somebody has come up and created and said, okay, here's a definition. You've got a sales and marketing team that's come out and said, okay, here's our go-to-market motion. Here's the market we've identified that we're going to take this to. Here's how we're going to position it in market. Here's our, advantages and outcomes that we're providing. You've had finance involvement that understands costing and whether or not they're profitable and what their margin is and what their margin is at different units and different quantities. And, so like, hopefully I'm expressing the point here and you get kind of where I'm going to, when all these things come together, the output of all this stuff is a defined product, a defined service, and a defined price. It has to exist. So if you're talking to a supplier and the supplier doesn't have a defined price, there's a lot of stuff behind it that then is missing, that doesn't exist. This is where I come to and I say, it's a huge red flag for me. Now look, okay, granted, if they're a reseller and they're reselling hardware, there's variability in pricing on hardware based on supply chain and everything else that's going on in the world, but they can turn around pricing to you very quickly if they're an efficient reseller and they know what they're doing. Good VARs have real-time systems. So if you ask for a quote, that person isn't taking out and opening up an Excel spreadsheet and then typing into an Excel spreadsheet and then, calling somebody else and sending emails back and forth and then referring to something else and then taking something and going, 1,000 times 1.25 to add margin. By the way, it's a terrible, that's not how you get margin. You have to divide by it's a really kind of just super simplistic way of knowing whether or not, again, how mature that provider is. Okay. So I said that was, red flag number one. I was going to talk about two red flags. So here's my second red flag. And this happened to me not too long ago. If you're talking with somebody and you hear the phrase, we're going to put our A team on this, or we're going to give you, I'm going to put my best people on this. We're going to put our A team on this. Some variation of that statement, right? What I have learned from that is they have just warned you that the experience you have is going to be awful. Why do you have an A team and a B team and a C team and a D team and an F team. Again, an organization, your least common denominator is the quality of your organization, right? And so if you're using phrases with people about like A team or versus a B team versus a C team, it's like, what is the actual lowest common denominator? And like, what do you actually have to have in order to be on the A team? And what I have found consistently is when those phrases come up from a supplier, it's usually that the standard is so low that the people that stand out as that top team are still terrible to work with. They're just better than everybody else that's there. And that standard is just so low that like in order to actually stand out and be better than everybody else that's there, it's just, this has happened to me for, over and over again for years. And I've seen this and I just haven't really, I don't think I've really like appreciated the information I was being given when I was being given it. And now it really stands out to me. Somebody says, oh, we're giving you our best people, or giving you our A team, or doing this. It's just like, whoa, Nelly, do I want to proceed with this? How bad is this going to be? Now, maybe it's just a phrase of speech, but like you can kind of tell the difference, like you can figure this out pretty quickly when you're talking to somebody and they use that kind of language with you, because they usually, people tell you who they are, like listen to them, right? And don't try to come up with like ideas or reasons why they're not telling you the truth. I mean, they're telling you the truth. They're telling you who they are and you should just listen to them. I mean, there's a lot more, these red flags, but these are two big ones, and if you're out in your market and you're sourcing something and you're trying to buy something, you're trying to figure out what service provider to contract with, or you're trying to do these different things. Red flag number one is their price list. Can they describe their pricing, how they got to their pricing? And number two, are you getting their A team? And, if either of those come up, maybe you should keep your search going, for another option. I'm Max Clark. Those are two of my red flags.